All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. My name is John Simpson. I'm the superintendent for the school district, and I wanted to introduce Kathy Vesperini, who's our director of media public relations, Miss Pat Weaver, who's our district webmaster, and of course Lisa Hilpert is the principal to some of your children, but not all of your children. So we do thank everybody for coming tonight. These forums are pretty much, they are the same at each of our locations, so there's nothing necessarily unique about this to Hudson School. This is the third forum that we had. We're extraordinarily excited. This turnout more than doubles our previous two. So we are very excited about that. The purpose this evening is to share with you some of the different things that we're doing currently to address and problem solve our space and our safety needs in our district. It's an unfinished process and product because it's incredibly important for us to involve the community and the stakeholders of our community in every stage along the way. So you're going to see some different slides and different information tonight with language where I write like thus far on it, and that's really because it's unfinished, our determination of priorities and some of the other aspects. So I just wanted to stress the importance of your voice and your contributions along the way. I promise that we're going to go through a process where I'm going to share a lot of information with you, answer questions. I'm going to give you opportunities to process, prioritize certain things. We'll come back together. At that point, I'll share you kind of the next stages along the way for our process, and then we'll dismiss at 8:30. The last slide that I give you will show you, it'll be a link to a website. On our district website, we have different information that's contained on there regarding this. Pat is videotaping tonight, so you'll find the presentation electronically on there. Real soon you'll find the video on there. So if you want to watch it again, if you want to share it with people, we're going to invite as many people as we can to learn this information as well as contribute. Okay? So naturally, everything that we do in the school system is about our children, and our children enter the system very young. So they start formally being educated at the age of 2 at our Walter Ambrose Center, but they certainly start prenatally through our FACE program, formerly Parents as Teachers. And so we're very connected to our kids from a young age, and it's our responsibility to see them beyond graduation, to graduation and beyond, and along the way to provide them with an environment that's both safe and secure and worthy of them and their educational experience in the school system. So tonight I'm going to share some different information with you, and it's really important that we listen and hear to you. And I intentionally included the language listen and hear because I don't want just to hear the words that come out of your mouth, hear the thoughts that you say, or listen to the words that you say, but I want you to truly feel like you were heard. It's important to feel heard. And so what we're going to share are some of the safety and space needs in our school, as well as where those needs generated from, where they were derived from, as well as our approach to addressing those needs. And from you, we're going to get your feedback on the priorities that we established, as well as which ones you think we may have missed, which ones you want to argue with, so to speak, as well as what options we should consider as we attend to the space enrollment crunch that exists in our school system, primarily at our elementary school level. So first, in terms of source of data collected, in recent history, we've collected a tremendous amount of data and information regarding, I just want to introduce Joe Dahl, one of our board members in the back of the room. Just did some introductions. Thanks, Joe. We've collected a lot of information in recent history about safety and about our spaces. First, accessibility needs. In 2016, we commissioned Riddle Design to go throughout all of our schools and buildings to analyze our buildings for accessibility through Americans with Disabilities Act and such. They completed a study in 2016 where we have data and information for all of our schools, and they are going through a revision of that right now to update our current data as it relates to that. Also, security assessments. This past year, we had Gallagher Bassett do a security audit. They are one of our insurance carriers, and they did a security assessment of all of our buildings. At the moment, we're going through another security assessment where our district is partnering with local law enforcement to go into all of our buildings and assess our buildings for security purposes, safety and security purposes. Facilities condition assessment. Last April, there was a presentation to the board. We had a company that came in and assessed our district facilities and infrastructure, from the floor in every setting, the walls, the boilers, tuck pointing, the driveway, anything infrastructure facility related was assessed. And along with being assessed, a life of that existing floor boiler was given. When would you anticipate that this would need to be replaced? And then an estimated cost of what it would cost to replace it at the time that you would have to replace it. So that company came in, did a very thorough analysis, and looked at all of our systems and infrastructure across 20 years, for the next 20 years. Enrollment projections for the past 2 years in a row, we've commissioned Dr. Charles Coffron to do enrollment projections for our school district. His projections are based on birth data. So what he does is he looks at birth data for a given year, the number of kids born with an elementary zip code. And then we look at 5 years later, how many kids go to the school or are district students that fall within that zip code. And what he's found that over the recent history, about 76 to 78% of the kids that are born in the district stay in the district and are students. Okay? And so he looks at both looking at past data, and then he projects future enrollment based on births. We've also this year we dug really down and dirty into our enrollment data, a little bit more granular, to look at everything as it relates to data. So we looked at, of our 4,500 plus K through 12 students, 4,700 plus pre-K students, how many participate in the voluntary transfer program, the VIC program, coming from St. Louis City here? Where are those children? What grades are they in? How many staff bring their kids to the Webster Groves School District? What grades are they in? What schools are they in? How many parents transfer their child from one home school to another home school? What grades? What schools? All of that. So we just broke down our data as much as we could. And then we also have information as it relates to asbestos within our schools. We've had assessments done of what we know. As I joked with the Hudson staff today, while this glue and while this hazardous product was being used in a lot of different ways, nobody was recording where it was going, because of course they didn't know it was going to be hazardous. But we certainly attend to, any time we're doing any kind of work, we're cognizant of the fact of, this glue was used to put this tile on the ground. So we always make sure we're responsive to not release it. But we also do know of some places where it does exist, albeit contained. And we also looked at programmatic needs. Are there any particular programmatic needs that the school is looking to take on that would have implications for physical environment and the infrastructure? This is just a picture of our district enrollment data. This is our K-12 data. This is our K-12 data. The official enrollment data that we submit to the state. We always submit attendance information, but there's the last Wednesday in September, the last Wednesday in January are kind of official numbers. And this just shows you from 2005, 2017, our numbers go up pretty substantially, and they're projected to continue on their upward trend. So our priorities thus far, and once again, I'll stress it's thus far because we're not done with our studies and information, and we want to hear from what community, and what do you say about these priorities, and what ones may we have missed or should be considered. So right now it's looking at, first of all, and these aren't in any particular order, construction of a single point of entry, a secure vestibule, electronic entry cameras, service window. Schools that are built today, when you walk into the school, when you go through the main set of doors, there's another secure set of doors on the other side. And prior to getting through those doors where children are, where adults are and stuff like that, there is a security safety process, which usually looks like having an administrative window or something where you're able to sign in, whether in our district you would do the Raptor, the background checks and everything. But it's an additional measure, again, which happens in schools today and is not in any of our schools. We have the electronic entry, we have cameras, but we don't have that security in that type of way. Secure doors on all classrooms and offices, also looking at common locks, master keys, glass mitigation. I'll show you some pictures of this. So as we look at classroom doors, we realized not too long ago that Hudson, not so much. Some of our other districts, yeah. We have a lot of old, gorgeous doors, glass pane doors, which are beautiful, but from a security safety standpoint, they don't provide that level of safety that other doors do. So we're looking at all the different office doors, classroom doors within our school system. Also considering having a master key or common locks. When you, for example, I give the example of I have 3 great-grand master keys to help me get into places around the school district. I can take the time and I can do it. I have the time. Sometimes it's a little frustrating if I want to move a little quicker. But as we think about having to secure a building, it would be certainly nice to have a single key, especially if I'm a building administrator or somebody who's going around to all the rooms to make sure that you're able to lock them. Workable blinds, reflective tape tent on all ground level exterior windows. Replace the windows as necessary. Again, that's looking at how do you create a little bit more of a barrier from the outside to that first level, even if it's just from a visual standpoint to what's happening within the classroom. And so whether that's, again, blinds that come down, whether it's tinting on windows like is here at Hudson or some combination of tinting to that. Exterior doors to be alarmed, close and latch properly, replace as needed. So for example, we've got this door propped open right here. Thank you, Julie, for noticing. But there are certainly systems today where if you have a door that is come ajar or is open for whatever reason, there are alarms, notification systems that can notify whoever is assigned to be notified that door is open. So while we have maybe a main focus on the single point of entry, which is still going to be our priority, this would just allow for another layer of supervision. District-wide portable communication system, radios and repeaters. This system would allow us, so all of our schools have walkies that they use for school purposes. We have a set of walkies that if we go on site, we can use as district administration. But we currently don't have a walkie system that goes throughout the entire school district. So for example, a couple weeks ago when we had the anonymous caller call into Bristol, and we're all responding, I'm heading over there, people are doing different things. This is our only method of communication. So we use text, we try and call one another, but it would be extraordinarily efficient, especially in that case where we made the decision out of extraordinary safety and precaution to lock out all our schools. It would be great to have all of the principals, all the administrators on a single device. It would just be so much more efficient. Out of sight zones marked in classrooms with phones located there. Right now in all of our schools and the training that happens, that would be bad if that bird came.
Is that bird?
Excuse me. Notified in the room, the students and the staff do their drills, know where the safety space is in the room. So if there was an intruder alert, they know that we go to this particular space out of view of the window, if we're able to. Again, it's a little bit easier here because of what the doors look like. Right now, our landlines for phones are not intentionally in the position of that safe zone. A lot of them, the way they were designed, are by the front door. Now, a lot of people have cell phones today, but if there was a need to depend on a landline, or if we wanted to use the landline, it would be better if it was out of the way of the window of the door where the intruder could possibly see in, and in that particular safe zone. So we wouldn't be looking to add additional phone lines, but to possibly move them to that location. Intruder alert and alarms, right now all of our schools have, if the secretaries, the admin assistants for any reason feel that they need to notify the police, they each have, and administrators know where they are, a button on their desk that they just press the button and the police come running. But also, we thought that would be worthy to consider looking at other people that would have access to do the same thing. Whether it's teachers with buttons, other staff with buttons, there certainly are apps today that you can do this with. Exterior, interior cameras, we have those in our buildings, but looking at having even more. And the Webster Groves Police brought to my attention last year that they had the capability, well, obviously the capability, to have the cameras at their site, at their station. I will say that there are some legal people that are looking at this now. The purpose of them having the cameras isn't so that they can look and see what teachers are doing at the school or monitor during the day. The purpose is that if there were a situation at the school, they would immediately be able to turn on all those cameras in their building. And so when they arrive, they have people that are telling them where the problem is. And it's not relying on the people that are in here trying to protect children, protect themselves, protect staff, to help direct them to where it is. So it would be something that would click on an emergency situation. Exterior visibility improvements. This is looking at, again, along with the site going into the buildings, in an ideal setting, the police would like to have shrubbery, bush, everything trimmed up pretty good so that as they drive around, they could see anybody that's up against the building. And lastly, the numbering of classrooms and offices, which we have in most of our locations, but are still working on. Other space priorities, we won't go through them all. I mentioned the accessibility data, some of the key priorities. The biggest ones are looking at elevators and ramps in schools. We have a number of buildings that certainly were ADA compliant when they were built, maybe 100 years ago, pre-ADA, but they're not anymore. So some of those areas that are inaccessible are grandfathered in, but certainly they're not inclusive and inviting to everybody who enters the building. So we've identified through the data a lot of the different schools where that needs to be attended to, specifically with elevators and ramps. So if you are a child or you are a parent coming from a concert and you want to visit classrooms at like a Bristol or Edgar Road or at Avery and some of our other buildings, you can't get everywhere in the building because we don't have access through the stairs. Some of our schools, such as Hudson, the stairwells are wide enough that you're able to put in an electronic ramp system so you can take people down and up. But in some of those schools, the stairwells are so thin that you can't do that and meet code and such. So looking at attending to some of those priorities, as well as some other ADA issues as it relates to restrooms and other miscellaneous things. Other certainly addressing asbestos, primarily identified as we have some tunnels at Clark, Edgar Road, Hickson, and Webster Groves High School that we know the asbestos is down there. Floor tile is needed, and then we mentioned right there the facilities condition assessment. We don't see anything in that current assessment and the data that would requires immediate attention, but still worth noting. So sample of enrollment space options. So what we did here is there's been no discussion or thought regarding what we're going to do to address kind of our space crunch in the elementaries. And I can't overstate enough that we are not working backwards from a predetermined solution, administration or board. We are generally looking to problem solve this together and come up with the solution that we think works best. This sample of enrollment spaces wasn't generated thinking of these are things that we have to do, that we need to explore first for addressing ours. But I bet many of you, if you were asked, what do different school districts do to solve space and enrollment, you probably would have come up with some of these. So just explaining what they are, enrollment policies, that's looking at our policies and practices for enrollment. So again, that practice of allowing kids to transfer from one attendance zone to another attendance zone. The practice of policy that allows for staff to bring their children if they're not residents of the school system. Looking at all those different things as it relates to enrollment. Class size standards. Currently in board policy, you'll find standards for classrooms all the way through high school. And so we base our determination on whether we add a section, a class, or reduce a section off of those standards. So we have a threshold where we go a certain amount above those standards, and if we go above that threshold, we generate a new section, in most instances. So one solution could be to, of course, up the standard, up the number of kids in a class. That would certainly be a possibility. Grade level configurations, that's looking at moving children from one grade level in one school to a different school. Elementary attendance zones, that is the possibility of changing boundary lines. Is that boundary lines a solution to solving this? Reconfiguration and or addition of space. Reconfiguration is what can you do within the existing space of the school to restructure it in order to possibly fit more kids, more classrooms within the space. So that's not changing the existing footprint of the building, whereas adding space, as we're defining it, is looking at pushing out and adding classrooms or whatever spaces are needed. School year schedule, an example of that could be is instead of having all the kids in the school district going to school for the same amount of time, doing some level of year-round schooling and having kids alternate their time in a particular school. School choice options, currently have one school choice option, that's at Gibbons Elementary. So this could be the possibility of adding school choice option at a bigger school, multiple options, possibly with priority going to attendance areas where schools are most full. Of course, the school choice option implies that people are going to choose that option if it's optional. So there's a level of risk with all these, I would say. And then leasing space. Is there space around schools that are bulging that we could temporarily lease space for kids to go to those schools? So belief that a picture is worth 1,000 words. Here are some pictures from Hudson and beyond that highlight some of this. First of all, the space, exterior doors at Hudson. Again, this could be an example of a door that you would want to monitor. We're also looking at a set of doors that are gorgeous, but also all glass for the most part. When you walk in the front doors of Hudson, those of you that have not been here, you get buzzed in right over here, and then you have to walk up a set of stairs, and the admin assistant's over here. So again, there's not a direct line of sight with who's coming in. She sees them on the camera, but before you get to her, there's 2 kindergarten classrooms right here. Okay. That's an example of accessibility at Edgar Road, where you've got a narrow hallway in the art room and some other classrooms are down below, and you can't put in a ramp. Edgar Road, we talk a lot about Edgar Road because they're projected, they've grown so much. We added a second modular there, which is scrunch the children on the playground. And if the data continues, we've already started to plan for the real possibility we're going to have to add a third modular unit at that school for next year, projecting even more in the next couple of years. Again, gorgeous door at Clark. This is an example too at the Walter Ambrose Family Center, where you're walking through the vestibule, and those of you that have been there know that the main office is pretty far down that hallway. It's an example of our staff and faculty in this district are so wonderful for so many reasons. This is the staff at Bristol, and I had a child that went to Bristol, is now at Steger, and I believe that as long as I was at Bristol, which was 6 years, the staff never had a staff lounge or a staff area to eat lunch. So you will find them at the lunch hour spread out all across that school eating lunch. Children working with adults in the hallways throughout our schools. That is a staff lunchroom that was repurposed for music. You can imagine a staff lunchroom isn't the size of a normal classroom. It's extraordinarily tight. That is an example of an extraordinarily tight music classroom. Here's an example of the shrubs and the site.